Hey there, AJ Beaver here. Thanks for tuning in to tonight's Thursday Night Thought. Tonight's message is a love note. When is the last time that you received a love note? Can you remember that? Was it on your pillow? Was it on your car door? Do you remember that space when somebody loved you and took the time to write something to you to tell you how precious you are? Let me read to you the words that I heard this week and that are so powerful, and then we'll go deeper into its application. So hold that space of this being a spiritual love note for you. Beloved, you are no longer in exile, for I have seen your spirit of brokenness, and I am here now for your liberation. The seeds of your tears, once planted in sorrow and suffering, shall become your tears of joy and compassion. Therefore, rejoice in this harvest process called passion. Isn't that a powerful message? So let me give you a little foundation of where this message came from. It came from a passage in the Bible of Psalm 126. And I believe that this book is our spiritual history. And what does that mean? That means that these stories are still playing out in our own spiritual nature, our own lives, and it's still alive and applicable today. So before I read you this passage, I want to give you a little background about what was going on at this time. And basically, the people of Jerusalem, the people of Israel, the Jewish people, the chosen ones, were exiled from their homeland because they had gone against some things that God had told them, right? Like God had laid it out before this happened. Don't do these things. They did these things, and then they were exiled, and they felt this period of judgment. And it was prophesied that this was going to happen, but it was also prophesied that one day they would return from exile to their homeland. Where is this story playing out in your own life? Because can you only imagine being the people of Jerusalem and your homeland is being destroyed? It's being, the women and children are being held captive. The temple was completely demolished. All of these things are going on, and you're banished, feeling separate from God, okay? I know there are times in my own life, and in those experiences, there are tears that are shed in sorrow and suffering, and you may be going through this right now. And the way to look at those tears are tears being planted spiritually to be reaped when we come out and come out of exile, right? And come back to our homeland. And that is what this is reminding us of. So here's what happens. When the Lord brought back his exiles to Jerusalem, it was like a dream where we were filled with laughter and sang for joy. And the other nations said, "What amazing things the Lord has done for them." Yes, the Lord has done amazing things for us. What joy. Restore our fortunes, Lord, as streams renew the desert. Those who plant with tears will harvest with shouts of joy. They will weep as they go to plant their seed, but they will sing as they return with the harvest. Isn't that a beautiful passage? A beautiful picture? So what this did is it really convicted me of my own spiritual life and how this story plays out in my life. And I was reminded that there have been times very recently that I've wanted to share my pain of that time when I felt separated from God, the time when I felt I was angry at God for the things that were going on in my life, the time where I was on my knees broken of spirit, and how it is that God wants to use those things for good, right? We can rejoice that that's a promise, that that's something that's playing out. So in my own life, I remember not wanting to go back to church. I remember thinking these people are just judgmental and I want to have nothing to do with them. Well, what was I doing in that process? I was judging them. It was keeping us both separate and me separate from my own spiritual nature. But when I realized that I'm not separate, you're not separate, in this story, it's already played out that the people returned. So no matter what you've done, no matter what you've experienced, no matter what circumstances are going on, you are no longer in exile. And in this promise, it's as if God says, whatever happened in that time shall be used to feel this passion around those things in your life. So for instance, for me, this pain, I was able to turn into tools for people to be able to use to get through their own pain in their lives. And it took a lot of vulnerability. It takes a lot of sharing the crap that I don't want to tell anybody that I was doing because I had sinned and I was separate from God. But the whole idea is to take what you sinned and was separate of God and those tears of sadness and sorrow and to reap joy from that. And that takes knowing that you are no longer in exile. You're no longer separated of God. We are no longer separated. We are eternally connected and we are constantly in communion with God in our spiritual nature because of our history, right? So the beautiful part about this is if you take those things that you feel maybe even vulnerable and don't want to share, those are actually the things that can become joy and compassion in someone else's life. So I was on a phone call this week with a student and I just started crying because I could feel the joy welling up in my own heart knowing that that pain in my life has now been used to help somebody else. And we don't have to feel regret or shame or any of those things because when it's used for that, or when it's used for compassion, that's the whole process. And that is the harvesting of passion. You can even feel it as I'm speaking. I can feel it in my life now where I'm no longer afraid of sharing those parts of myself. And I hope you aren't either. And I hope this is a reminder in this story of how it's playing out in our lives. It can encourage and inspire you to share in a place of joy and compassion for someone else. Let's stop the judgment. We are no longer in exile. And we can step in that place of harvest. And it's a process no matter where you're at. But this is the promise. So thanks for letting me share. And I look forward to sharing our next Thursday Night Thought together.